So it's a day late, and I'm finally here. Canada won and Curacao won the Gold Cup. What does it mean? Well, let's talk about it. Alright guys, welcome to What Does It Mean? It's basically our match reaction series. We look at a game that we've watched, usually with a Canadian national team or one of the African competitions, and we talk about what we've learned so far. And like this type of content, make sure you give us a subscribe, maybe leave a like on the video, turn on notifications every time it hits. We do primarily African and Canadian content because we want to be the Africans, we didn't do both. So this game, Canada won, Curacao won. I told a couple of my buddies I was going to rewatch this, and they were like, don't bother. It's time you can't get back. And there's a lot of talking points to it, I think. Especially when we look at the result, and especially that second half. Second half was a little bit more open, but I think there's a lot of takeaways you can look at. But let's first start off with, what do we mean by this? Normally when we start this, if I'm organized, I'll talk about the competition. And I think it's a very important point that I want to bring up. Are Curacao an improving side? Yes. Did Curacao deserve to win this game? Most definitely. Did Canada overlook Curacao? I think it's arguable. I do think, though, there is always a conversation with how do you want to play versus who your opponent is. And there was a point I made when they were playing Suriname. Yes, some Canadian fans looked at Suriname and said, well, it's just Suriname. You guys were hyped 4 years ago or however many years ago during World Cup qualifiers. We crushed you, we came back. And yes, it was very much one-sided in the two matchups for the Nations League quarterfinals. I think for me, one of the things that I note with a team like Curacao, and could have been applied to, a team like Suriname, that could be applied to a team like Curacao. You can press teams different way, but teams that are comfortable on the ball, pressure won't rattle them. They can dribble their way through, they can pass their way through, they can move their way through. And we saw moments where that happened in the first half. And Curacao was always going to be a scary type team for me. In the same way that Mexico will be scary. More so Mexico because they also have the players who can punish you. But Curacao and Suriname will always make me feel a little bit uneasy because in those pressing moments, they are comfortable enough to pass the ball out. They are comfortable on the ball that they won't always be rattled. Which means if they can get past a wave or two, then they're breaking. And then your defense and your team is not set up right to really defend against a build-up or even a counter. And so for me, I look at those sides and I say, they're always going to cause me a little bit of concern because of the style that they play. And it's always going to be, that's always going to be a thing. But I'm really curious to see how they set up with. So let's start off with the lineup. For Canada, you had Dane Sinclair in goal again. I think right now it's showing and proving that Sinclair is number one. Zoran Bissong as your left back. Kamal Miller, Joel Waterman, Nico Seger as your back line. Naifan Saleba, Ishmael Kone in the middle. Schaffelberg and Nelson on your outside midfielders. And then a repeat, Olosei up top with Jonathan David, more so in the second striker, but really the 10. And this lineup to me is, and this is where I would say, if you think Canada overlooked Curacao, to me, I think you look at the midfield, you look at the center backs, you think to yourself, maybe they are. Not to say they aren't playing well, but Kamal Miller, I don't think, has been at the level since the World Cup. And Kamal, to be perfectly honest, Kamal Miller, I don't think really suits a pressing style. Kamal Miller is best, I think he's best suited. He looks like the athletic center back when you're defending. But when you're in that low block defending, mid block defending, Waterman as well can play that style, right? Those two center backs I think are perfect for John Herdman's style of footballing at the national team. I don't think they mesh well with an up and down. I don't think they have the foot speed, nor do I think they have always the awareness. Kamal, I find, sometimes gets beat with his man on the outside shoulder too often. And then Waterman isn't the most physical. Now, if you were expecting a more physical game versus Curacao, I can understand why you would do that. But then you can't leave your center backs. And once the game started going and Curacao started to figure things out, diagonal balls were just threading the center backs, bypassing the midfield overall and just threading. And it made no sense, but they were finding the spaces, and the center backs were left kind of wondering. The middle. Saliba and Kone. And this is where I will say this. I appreciate Stéphane Eustáquio a lot. I appreciate Mathieu Choignard a lot. One of those two have to be on the field at all times. Saliba is more of a 10, Kone is more of an 8.5. Asking them to be defensively responsible. Yes, Kone would just swing back when he had to, and that's fair. But both these players are ball progressors who want to push that ball. And so if you want to have them sit up there in the middle without them, by the time Choignard comes to this game later in the second half, the flow of the game is already at a point where Curacao could pass to the midfield they wanted to. They could also diagonal balls, confusing the center backs if they wanted to. And so to me, I don't think you can do Saliba and Kone on the pitch at the same time. You can do it if you have an additional midfielder. That's a whole nother conversation, because I'd argue they do have a third midfielder, and he's arguably your best player, and that should not be the case. Jonathan David shouldn't be the 10. That is where he's comfortable. And he's the type of player who wants to roam. So when you need help in the midfield, he'll find himself there. But is that the best use of your most lethal striker? I'd argue no. But the midfield, you can't go Kone and Saliba. I think against Honduras, Choignard as well as Saliba worked. If you want to go Choignard and Kone in this matchup, you could have as well. But I don't think you can go a full match with two attack-minded fullbacks and then not expect to see your defense in the transition look subpar because you're missing some of that defensive stopping. Out wide, Schaffelberg to me is a good player, but Curacao were much better in terms of closing off those angles, whether they were getting the ball in too narrow and the backdoor passes weren't there, or whether or not just 1v1 defending. Curacao were equipped to deal with the wingers. Yes, once Tejan got in, you saw Tejan kind of show his class a little bit of step above, but Jaden Nelson, Jacob Schaffelberg, to me, they weren't bad, but they were pedestrian at best. And then Tani, I mean, this is what you're going to get with Tani. He'll score a banger every once in a while, and then after that, you'll go 10 games probably where he's putting shots on frame. I'm sure in his next game that he starts, he's going to hit the post again, and then you're going to have to decide, do you want the shot creation or do you want the production? I know people were clamoring for Promise David. We'll see if he is healthy enough. Even in a game like this, as crazy as I thought this is going to be, even a game like this where you're trying to find players, maybe a Jefferson where you just say, just go, we're sending you Route 1 football, so go get it. And maybe he's able to handle that a little bit better, but Tani is going to give you chances and a goal every 10 games. So if you're fine with that, if you think you can get scoring from everyone else, I think that's great. If you don't get that scoring from everyone else, that's where you fall into that situation where you get one goal and then you have nothing else to show for it. And I think that is the concern you have with that lineup. So Canada scores in the 9th minute off of a set-piece goal. Nathan Saliba gets it off the half volley. Beautiful goal in the 9th minute. And at that point, you're thinking, okay, here we go. Canada's going to continue right where they left off from the Honduras matchup, sorry. But Curacao continues to start to find the diagonal balls on them throughout the first half. Dane Sinclair has a nice point-blank save a little bit later on, but you start to see that, okay, this team isn't going away, and it's a game where you have to bury your chances. Honduras was a great matchup because it seemed that everyone who tried to put a shot was playing something dangerous. In this game, Curacao were much better built. Again, I maintain Curacao is the second best team in this group. Yes, on a rank, Honduras was in pot 2, but Curacao is the second best team in this group. They have the players, and they can play. The difference between Curacao and Suriname right now, same type of players that they're getting, Curacao scores goals. Yes, Suriname have scored goals in their groups, and they've looked good, but to me, Curacao as a goal threat have always been far more consistent than Suriname. And so the first half goes, it's 1-0, and you're starting to see the cracks within it. Canada makes substitutions as we go. The first substitution for Canada comes in the 56th minute. Ali Ahmed comes in for Jayden Nelson, and then a few minutes later, he is tackled, is injured, and is removed from the game. Tejan comes in for him. Alistair Johnson comes in for Nico Sigur, and then Mathieu Choignard comes in for Ishmael Kone. And by that point, in the 70th minute, Curacao are having this game as an up and down type of a matchup. And it's reminiscent of that second half, to me, at the end of the game versus Uruguay that Canada played at the Copa America, where you really want them to try to shut this game down. Maybe they're looking for a goal, but they're looking for the insurance goal. And the continuous up and down leaves them a little bit vulnerable, and eventually Curacao gets the eventually. And when I say eventually, I mean Curacao scored about 4 goals, all nullified. 3 of them were nullified from VAR, offsides, and what have you. Do I think the referees were helping? No, the refs have been bad this entire tournament for every team. Right? This isn't a CONCACAF conspiracy. The refs have been poor. The refs have honestly been, in all the games I've watched. I've watched USA games, I've watched Mexico games, the refs have been poor this entire tournament. So, yes, were there missed calls? Of course. If you're Canadian, are you yelling about how Room runs out of the box with the ball? Yes. If you're Curacao, you're yelling about the handball in the box that Saliba gets? Yes. Are you yelling about how a couple goals are called off due to VAR or foul? Yes. Every team has gripes. Curacao have more gripes because in this game, it seems like they've scored enough goals to win this game comfortably, and Canada missed enough goals to win this game comfortably. It ends 1-1, which means the group right now sits at Canada with 4, Honduras, who beat El Salvador, with 3, Curacao with 2, and then El Salvador with 1. As we're recording this, I'm kind of keeping an eye on some of the matchups from Group A and Group. We're watching the groups there, and what we're seeing is teams that are doing well. And interestingly enough, we're kind of seeing what it works out. So right now you're seeing Saudi Arabia, and so that would be Group D playing, and then afterwards we're going to see Group A play, and then B and C are going to play on Wednesday. Or Tuesday, VPN. And for Canada, it's effectively winning your top in the group. Yeah, because Curacao would have to beat Canada will come out of the group, but they'll finish second if they don't beat El Salvador. And then the second matchup is Curacao versus Honduras, which I think will be a very good game. I think Curacao should have the edge there, but Honduras had a good bounce back from their performance. So I'm very much curious for what you see there. But for Canada, I believe Jesse Marshall will be back for this game. So I'm curious to see how he handles this lineup. Injury with Ali Ahmed. Looks like possibly Achilles. I haven't heard anything. I was away this weekend, so I am scouring and seeing what could happen. And if they're down a winger, this might be interesting in terms of what happens on the pitch. Do they call up another winger? In my mind, I think a player like Theo Corbeanu from TFC would be an ideal type of a player who can kind of mix between the wing as well as come in, be an emergency 9? Or do they switch and go more from a 4-2-3-1 type of a play and try to be a little bit more fluid that way? We'll wait and see. But right now, Canada are in the driver's seat, but a result gets them through. Guys, if you are a day away from this, you'll have a couple days in between. Let me know what you think. If you're a Canadian, one of the worst games you've seen them play under Jesse Marsh. I've seen that comment floating around thinking this might be the worst Marsh performance we've had, even though Marsh wasn't behind the bench. If you're from Curacao, there's definitely a lot to see, a lot to grow with. I have them possibly coming out of their group for World Cup qualifiers. And it wouldn't surprise me if Curacao comes out of this group as well. They've shown well. And you just have to continue to be clinical. I think they've shown that they have players who can score. Now the question is, and I think they're of the two, and I always lump them and Suriname together. I think of the two, I think they're better suited for CONCACAF play right now, just because it feels as if they've been able to put up better fights. Suriname, I think, will be there in a year or two. But I think right now, of the two Dutch colonies, as we'll call it, I think Curacao are definitely better suited and can cause trouble to a team who wants to pass, or a team if you want to play more athletically and more physically. I think they're suited to play multiple styles here. But you guys let me know in the comments. We have a couple days. And how do you think this group ends up? I think it will be Canada and Curacao who make it out based off how they've looked. But Honduras will make Curacao work for it. And El Salvador will see what type of game they give Canada. But let me know. And as always, I'm going to stop talking right here.